Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Working Audio Tools podcast with myself, Ed Thorne, my co-host Paul Third, and yet another special guest, this time all the way over from the States. Thank you to DroKid for sponsoring this podcast. You can get 30% off your first year's subscription with DroKid that Paul and myself actually use for our own musical distribution. There'll be a VIP link to that in the podcast show notes and the YouTube description. Before we get into the episode though, we need you. We need your help because we need artists to mix and feature on this podcast. The podcast is documenting mine and Paul's journey to becoming full-time mix engineers, and to do that, we need a lot of practice. If you've heard previous episodes, you'll know that Paul and I are comparing and critiquing each other's mixes. It's a really fantastic learning tool for both of us, and we think it's a very engaging concept. So listen to last week's episode, for example, and next week's episode where we have mixes. You can feel free to leave your comments underneath the videos, but please be kind. It's too easy to troll on YouTube, and we don't like that kind of stuff. So if you are interested in being featured, please drop us a line on Instagram. Follow us on Instagram at Working Audio Tools, and we will listen to your submissions, and we'll get back to you if we think we can get something positive out of the mix. And by that, I don't just mean we want to get a flawless sounding mix. Something that we can get our teeth into, something that's a challenge for us possibly as well, something that we can talk about and engage with you guys on as well. With that said, Paul, please can you introduce this week's guest?
Hello, everyone. This week we have got another guest on the Working Audio Tools podcast. He's also a fellow YouTuber like ourselves, but he is way more than a YouTuber. He is what we want to be, which is a full-time mixing and mastering engineer. Let me introduce you all to Matty Harris. Matty, how are you doing this fine, well, I was going to say fine evening. It's evening for us. It's afternoon for you. So how are you doing this fine afternoon?
I'm doing great. I'm over here in LA. It is noon exactly. And I was in the East Coast and I just got back. So I'm in like 3 different time zones already today.
The jet lag hitting you hard, is it?
No, it's only 3 hours. The Europe to here is the nightmare.
Oh yeah, we know all about that. Our trip to LA was an absolute nightmare.
It's rough. It's rough.
Tell us a little bit. Tell the audience a little bit about you, how you started in the industry, how you kind of cut your teeth, and how you ended up going from Boston, Massachusetts, all the way to LA. Which is, how long have you been in LA now?
I've been here 13 years. Wow. This month, I think, actually, or last month. Yeah, 13 years. I started out, I grew up in New England, Maine, and then Boston, and I played drums. I started playing drums. I got into music early. I wasn't a sports guy. I couldn't even catch a ball. So, sports music kind of became the thing. I was a big kid who couldn't play sports. And so I started, getting into music, playing drums and stuff. And then I would, record my friends, and I'm a bit older, so we would have tape decks, and we'd record like the drums, and then take another tape deck and bring it back and record the bass and like go back and forth. And I always found that stuff really interesting. And then, came time to go to college or not. And I applied to one school because I didn't really want to go anywhere else. I just wanted to go drum. And I applied to Berklee School of Music in Boston and got in. And then, I got there, and it's such a competitive school. I thought, I grew up in New England. I won like awards and like, best drummer of New England for jazz band and stuff like that. And I thought I was like the best, you know what I mean? And then I got to Berklee, which has the best across the world. And I was like, I'm an okay drummer. Like, I'm not the best.
This sounds like my journey coming from Sheffield to London.
Yeah.
I can relate.
Yeah.
I actually considered going to Berklee when I was about 17, but the prices were astronomical compared to UK tuition.
Oh, I bet. It's insane. I mean, it took me I had a little bit of a scholarship, but it took me a very long time to pay that one off. Yeah. So like I said, as I got there, I realized jazz drumming is probably not going to be my full-time career. And the good thing is from, recording me and my friends as we grew up, I was really interested in the audio world too. And so I applied to get into their music production engineering program. I started just learning, all the tools of the trade from some amazing people there, While I was at school, they told us you would need to intern at some point, and that's how you kind of move your way up, was interning at studios. And so I started doing that while I was at Berklee. it was kind of fun because as I moved up the little intern ladder, I'd be in sessions with like some of my teachers as they were coming over to the studio I was working at. It worked out really well. Is right when I was kind of graduating college, one of the main engineers was moving back to Chicago, and they needed a guy to kind of fill in on the late night sessions, and I got the gig. And I just started engineering from there, basically, doing a lot of recording and stuff like that.
So how long would you say it took you till you got to the point where you were kind of, comfortable? Because I know that when I left uni, I was nowhere near ready to go out and do it on my own. When you leave uni, you're like, yeah, this is great. Yeah, I've got a degree. And then look at me now, like 10 years later. And that's me just now trying to become full-time.
I still don't think I've gotten there yet. No, it was crazy, man. So I'm 44 years old. So I came up right at the time where tape was heading out the door and Pro Tools was coming in. I learned Pro Tools because I knew it could help me get my foot in the door, and it actually did. And it was kind of the only reason I think they gave me like an engineering job at this studio is because I could work the computer in the Pro Tools system. But when I first started, it was freaking insane because they were still using tape machines, but then they were syncing Pro Tools with it too. And then all the like MIDI stuff was done on a different machine. So you would have to put like SMPTE from the tape machine, send it to the Pro Tools computer, and send it to this other computer that would then send MIDI to the drum machines, and hope to God you could hit play and they would all start together, right? And so I would have to do that with like a rap group of like 20 people in the studio. You know what I mean? Like the pressure was like insane. And they'd be like, why isn't this working? Because I was like lost. You know what I mean? I would like try to get it going and like one thing goes wrong and nothing's going to play. That really pushed me to like get good at all of it. You know what I mean? And so like when there weren't sessions, I'd get into the studio, even if it was late night, and just really get this craft down of being able to get things onto tape in a good way, in a fast way, and then be able to record people and all that stuff. So I would say a good 6 months of that. I mean, super pressure helped me move along quite fast to the point where I at least felt comfortable in the studio when a client came in and I felt like I could record them and get them out the door with, at the time, a CD, at least a rough mix of what they recorded. So, like everyone's journey is different, how that happens. But I think I was just so scared to death of like things going wrong. Yeah, that I had to like adapt fast or I would get fired. And I was told later on by one of the senior engineers, like I was this close to like losing the gig because I was just, I was lost. You know what I mean? I was so new. I was probably too new to be in that position.
So how did you move from there to LA, or was there something in between?
Yeah, so I was in Boston working at all the big studios in Boston for about 10 years, actually.
Right.
And then, I had some good successes there. Boston was known for like fairly well for like underground hip hop music. And so did a lot of like underground hip hop stuff with some like cool artists there. And then this kid named Sammy Adams came to the studio. And we worked on this record, and like I didn't think, like I thought it was a good album. I was like, this is cool. It's a cool independent artist, and but I didn't think much of it. It's like because like when in Boston it's a small market, so everything you do doesn't usually like blow up. You know what I mean? It's a lot of like medium level artists that like have like a small cult following type thing. So this kid ended up like blowing up and like ended up being like one of the first independent artists to go #1 on iTunes. When that happened, every label in the world started calling, and they like shipped us out to LA. And on that album, I mixed and mastered it, but I also co-produced it with Sammy too, because he was pretty new at making beats and stuff, and I've been making beats as well for a long time. And so we did a lot of it together. And then so I got shit. We all went out to LA, and like the stuff you hear of like happens. Like we got picked up in a limo and we went to Conway Studios, which is probably still my favorite studio in Los Angeles. And like, like I walked up to the soda machine, and like B.O.B. at the time, the rapper B.O.B. was there like getting a soda. And I was like, oh, like this is crazy. Like we freaking made it, dude. Like this is it. Like you know what I mean? And there was an option to like get a publishing deal and come out here, or just stay in Boston and be happy and keep working on independent artists and all that. And I was like, dude, like, if it's ever going to happen, I got to take this like plunge now, you know? So I got out, I said, let's do it. You know, I'm going to sign a publishing deal. That will be my money. And plus this independent label was going to pay me to come be like the engineer for a year or two. So it was like the greatest way to get out to LA. And so I did it. I took the plunge and like left like whatever, everything I built in Boston and just like said, I'm going to LA. And so we got out here and like the first year was pretty good because that label was paying me to engineer and help out. But then Sammy decided not to sign to a major. And then he did, and then everything got separated, and the whole thing kind of fell apart. And then the next thing you know, it's like the year after, I'm in LA, still waiting for this publishing deal to get signed, and like I'm just broke out here, like trying to figure it all out. And so I had a studio, I was like sleeping in it, and finally the publishing deal went through, and things kind of started calming down at that point, you know. As far as, you know, starting to find artists to work with and stuff like that.
In regards to, say, like the difference between the scene of, say, like going from Boston to LA, is there even like a different style of mixing? I'm just thinking kind of the stories that you hear, you know, like you had the New York guys and you had the London guys, and was there a sound that you had to adapt to? Because I know even guys like Spike Stent, when they moved across, there was a London UK sound, and he had to change kind of his sound to adapt. Did you have to adapt?
I didn't feel so. Like, I mean, I understand with the Spike thing because I think the music's mixed a little bit. Not so much nowadays, but it was back then in the UK than in the States. But I was already kind of working on a lot of the newer style music. So it wasn't too much of a problem to kind of like adapt to LA. Like the culture adaptation was very different, you know? And the way everything works out here was super different because everybody's like talking a good game in LA. Like,
we found that ourselves.
And it took a while to figure out what was real and what was not, and what you should spend your time on, and all that stuff. You know what I mean?
Matty, I have a question that I've not really asked many people, but I think this would be a great opportunity. Say, like when you're working with independent labels, how different is it working with independent labels to a major label? Like that's the one thing I've never had any experience with. Is there a big difference, or is there any adjustments, or just in terms of the way that they want the files delivered, or just like the way that the A&Rs are they picky? Like, what is it like to mix for labels?
The fees?
Yeah, it's way better. I'm just kidding. No. So like I would say 80% of my work is independent labels and artists, and then 20% is major label stuff, right?
Right.
The cool thing about when you're working with an indie artist or indie label is a lot of times it is like you're one-on-one with the artist a lot of times. You know, like you guys are talking about the mix and there's not a whole lot of other people involved, maybe the producer, right? The artist, the producer, and you. And so it's cool in that fact that it's just a few of you working, right? On the major label side, it's usually the A&R who reaches out to me. 80% of the time, I probably don't even talk to the artist. Right, you know what I mean? Yeah. And so it's like the A&R reaches out, hey, we want you to work on, try this project, work on this project. And then, we start working on it. I send it to him. And then either he or she or whatever, they send me back notes, or maybe the producer comes on the chat and we all start talking, and possibly the artist. But it's so rare for some reason with the major labels that you actually end up talking to the artist.
That's weird. I never would have thought that.
In my experience, what I mean? Yeah, in my experience, it's usually the A&R for sure I'm dealing with, and then possibly the producer, depending on who the producer is. If it's like a bigger producer who's pretty like well involved, then yeah, you're probably going to be on the email chain with him. If it's like what I like to call like a beat maker or someone who just made the track and doesn't really care after that, you probably won't be talking to them. You'll just be talking to the A&R.
The Working Audio Tools podcast is brought to you in association with our friends at DroKid for all of your musical distribution needs. Don't forget, you can't just upload your songs to Amazon, Spotify, iTunes, or Tidal. You have to go through a music distribution service. There are many out there, but DroKid is the one that Paul and myself use. They don't take any of your royalties. You keep 100% of the streaming revenue that you earn. For just $1.92 a month or $22.99 a year, You can upload unlimited songs. Your lyrics can be found in Google and other places. You get the blue Spotify verified checkmark, and you can create royalty splits between yourselves and fellow contributors. You also get access to the new DroKid iPhone app for editing and uploading songs and accessing your statistics on the move. There are plenty of other tools available on DroKid. We'll go through those in another section.
And in regards to the feedback, is there different feedback in regards to dealing with an A&R as opposed to, say, dealing with an artist? Do you find that the A&Rs are sometimes just like, vocal up, drums up, like backing vocals a little bit more, where an artist could maybe be a little bit more particular? I'm not entirely sure.
And it totally depends. A lot of A&Rs, when they got to that position, they're pretty good at listening to music. I'm not going to try to take anything away, because some people give A&Rs a bad name, They know what they're talking about, you know what I mean? They know what makes a good song. And so the A&R's notes are usually pretty good. The artist is always interesting, because sometimes it's really easy and they're just like, this is great. Sometimes you'll get a ton of notes, and I found that a lot of times when you get a ton of notes from an artist, it might not be the song. It might be like a psychological thing where they're not comfortable with their voice 100% yet. And so they're trying to overcompensate for what they don't feel comfortable with it. And one of the sure signs of that is more reverb, more delays, more this, more that. And it's you don't feel comfortable with your voice. Yeah. Because honestly, if you listen to most of the records on the radio, they're dry as a bone as far as reverb. There's delays used more than reverbs, and unless it's a post record or something where it's part of the vocal sound, So a lot of times it's a psychological thing with the artist where it's listen, man, you sound really good. You don't need all that to make this work, and so that's where the difference can be with the A&R. The emotional side of it is maybe not so entangled as it is with the actual singer or songwriter or whatever it is you're dealing with, just the artist. Now, you also mentioned fees and deliverables and stuff like that. The fee thing is mostly when I'm working with independents, I ask for the money before we start mixing. Unless it's someone I've been working for a long time. I have artists like Cam Meekins who I work with a lot. And he's become a friend, and he was signed to Atlantic, and then he wanted to get out of his deal, which is something you see a lot of times these days, is artists don't even want to be in their deal anymore. And we work a lot together, and I'm just pay me whenever, so it kind of depends. I would say if you're working with an independent artist for the first time, just try to get paid before you start, or at least get half up front. With the labels, you do all the work, you send every damn deliverable they want, and then you have to send an invoice, and then in a month and a half, you'll get paid, hopefully. And obviously the labels do charge quite a bit more money than you can for an independent artist who might be paying, out of their pocket or whatnot. You do have to do a lot more work with the labels, especially when it comes to deliverables. They want, all the different versions. They need stems in a specific way now because the whole Atmos thing going on. So, you can spend hours just getting the deliverables together for the label after you do the mix and or master. Whereas a lot of times the independent artist just needs a show track and a mix, and maybe a year later they call you and say, hey, I actually need the stems because I'm going on the road and so forth and so on. So it's a lot more looser and relaxed with independent artists, which I actually prefer. Where the labels, it's there might be a lot of people on the email chain with a lot of different notes and different ideas, because sometimes you can have 2 A&Rs and a producer and then the songwriter. Sometimes it gets super complicated like that, and the higher up the food chain the artist is a priority, more and more people will get on the email chain. Then it's well, this guy wants that and this guy wants that, and you're at revision 17 because everyone's got an idea of what they think the song should be. So it can get complicated.
And how do you deal with the politics side of it? Because we speak a lot to engineers about, when you might have a difference of opinion, if maybe you're no, I'm actually really happy with what I've done here, or no, the bass should sit this way, or how is it difficult to deal with, as you said, so many cooks in the kitchen, and you start here and you think it's okay, and then all of a sudden you're kind of drafted over here, and then, oh no, we want to move over here, and he says this. How do you deal with all that communication?
Yeah.
And I find that a nightmare.
Yeah, I always say it's you just got to completely put your ego to the side. My version 1 is how I think the mix should sound, right? That's my representation of your song. And then after that, it's your song. You know, I'm not going to sit there and be like, no, you know, like I made the bass sound this way and I had it through a freaking tube tech and there's no way it could sound better. Like, I'm not going to do that. Like, it's your song, and whatever you want changed, I'll change it. Now, I might say, hey, you know, like we could maybe do it this way or that way. And by bringing your bass up 10 dB, it might make your whole mix sound muddy. But it's totally up to you if you want to do that. I'm just letting you know, you know? So like stuff like that, I think there's like, you know, an elegant way to say things if you really think it's too far gone. But you know, nine times out of 10, it's a lot of just small notes. Like I want the vocal up 2 dB here. And, you know, I wanted that echo that you put at 3 minutes to be 2 dB louder. It's like a lot of stuff like that, unless you get into a nightmare session where they're just like, you know, want to re-record things and send new vocal files, which happens too, you know, especially nowadays. You just got to be flexible for whatever comes, you know. You can do so much now with the tools we have, but I think it's also like a curse too, because you can do so much with the tools we have.
Totally, I get what
that
you mean.
like the song can never be done sometimes, you know.
Are you in the box or are you hybrid? I'm
hybrid, but if I'm being completely honest, these days, I'm like 90% in the box. More hybrid when I'm mixing than when I'm mastering. A lot of times when I'm mastering, the mix is so dialed in, even just going out through the converters can change the sound, right? And a lot of times it can not kill transients, but sometimes just it makes it a little bit less edgy, right? And if people are so used to like kind of this precise thing, it can kind of take away from than add to by going outside of the box. I tend to master more so in the box, but a lot of times I'll try something. Like I was just mastering for this new artist, and I ran something through, and I didn't like it, so I went back to the box, you know? Most of my analog stuff's more for color or, you know, some cool like sound. Like I have like the Silver Bullet and then this Tube Tech, which is really great for really great EQ. And you know, stuff like that just kind of change the vibe of a song is when I tend to use it.
Are you still using the Silver Bullet hardware? Or because I watched your video about the plugin and you were pretty upset.
I know, it's so annoying. Oh, so annoying. It hasn't been getting used as much lately.
Is it not? Right.
I actually, it's funny because I really like the aspect ratio on the Silver Bullet for a little bit of width. And so I was just using that actually, just that for this master. It's weird. Sometimes like the width stuff sounds better analog than it does in the box.
Do you think that's because a lot of the times you might have a bit of like left and right tolerance? Again, the left, that
100%.
Yeah, you can find that with analog, but again, if there's the left and right tolerances are a little bit off, then again, you're going to have more side signal, and then it could kind of add this width, which could be a really, really cool effect. And I didn't realize that until I got into the whole analog thing, and I've seen the tolerances for myself, and you go, that's where the width can come from, and it's like so easy.
No, I totally think that, you know, so many people when you read online, like it's wider and this, it's just that's what's happening. You're putting it through your converters, and but yeah, I mean, I think like plugins are so good now, and then with the way revisions come now, and like the amount of work you have to do, like I got so many mixes going throughout a week, you have to move quick. And and I feel I got to a point where I was like, I think the analog, like on my mix bus specifically, is making this worse than better, because I might forget like the setting, and then I switch to the mix and I recall the older mix, and then I haven't had, and I'm like, oh man, I have this whole other mix. I don't even remember what the EQ was. Like, so I would have like a setting just for this EQ, and that was what I would run it through, so I wouldn't change it ever. But then it's like, well, you're not doing anything. You're just running it through this machine, and it's not like you don't have free reign to change it. So that's why I just think like sometimes like in the box is better. It sounds just as good now. It's just different than
that's a good
analog.
Term. That's a great term.
But I feel like you have more freedom in the box, you know. Except like I have a bunch of the Better Maker stuff, which I will use for mastering quite a bit. And that stuff's great because it recalls on its own, you know.
Are you the same as Worrell? Because we found, I know you've not watched the Worrell one yet, but he was talking about the Better Maker. It was either the limiter or the compressor, and he was saying that I think there's a setting that he has, and he went, if Worrell can't get it in the box, nobody can get it in the box. What is it about the Better Maker stuff? Because I know that you've talked about it a lot on your channel. What is it about the Better Maker stuff that kind of draws you to it?
I mean, the first thing was that it was recallable,
Yeah,
right?
totally.
It's all instantly recallable analog, which is like huge in its own. I like to say like there's a clean expensiveness to the Better Maker stuff that I like. That's the only way I've ever really been able to describe it. And then it's just it's useful. Like the limiter, the mastering limiter. Sometimes the clipping just sounds better if you're going to clip, which I don't have to that much these days. But sometimes it will sound better than the digital clippers, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Because it just adds a thing, and then it has some different saturation settings you can use. I hate the I think it's the odd one. It's too much.
Mm-hmm.
They have a new limiter. I don't know if he fixed it or not, but the even saturation was just way too much, like 10%, and it's like store it in the master.
Yeah.
I never understood that one, but the odd one can like just open up a mix sometimes if you use it on the like 4,000 hertz or something, and will just help like give it a sparkle, but it's not EQ, it's just a little bit of saturation in that range. And so that thing's awesome for that. And then their EQ is great because it has MS capability, and it's got a pool tech, and then a bunch of others. It's just really flexible, and it sounds good. I think that's the best way to say it.
I've always wondered how the guys managed to do it back in the day. When you think about Clear Mountain and CLA, like, and you used to see the recall sheets. I was like, oh my God. Because you could never get it perfect, could you? The mix that you had on a Tuesday, if you had to recall everything on a Thursday and put everything back, it would sound different, wouldn't it? Like, you would never get...
Oh, yeah.
No way.
I mean, just the room changing temperature can change the way something sounds, you know? So I don't know. I mean, I think back in the day, too, they just took, version 1.
Yeah, true.
So... I mean, I don't know. I wasn't around LA for those times, but I can only imagine. It must have been insane.
Would you be able to tell me, like, I found it funny, and I know you'll know what I'm on about, because I seen a meme on Instagram, and Ed was chuckling at it, and it was basically an LA Mixers starter pack, and it had the DW Fern Red Pultec, a Tube Tech CL1B, and I think it was 1176 as well. Do you know why, especially the DW Fern, why that's in so many Mixer studios? Like, it was like everywhere that we went.
I do know why. I don't know if I want to say so on here, but John Castelli, actually, I give John Castelli all the credit for the DW Fern beginnings, because I think he was one of the first guys out here to start using it.
Mm-hmm.
And then, there's some guys around who really like the gear and give it to other guys. And I think maybe that's probably how it all happened. But I still to this day haven't even used one, which,
have you known?
Except the Ruby from Acoustica, which I've heard from one guy sounds just like it, and another guy sounds nothing like it. So
yeah,
there's a collaboration for you guys on YouTube.
Yeah, I know, right? I know.
And in terms of mastering, do you have like multiple limiters that you go to, or you kind of got like a set limiter? Is it like Ozone? Is it like Fab Filter, or do you kind of alternate?
So 99% of the time I use Fab Filter and Ozone. Mm-hmm. Sorry, my dog's scratching. Can you guys hear that?
Yeah.
Luki, stop, dude. We're trying to do this podcast. All right, maybe he'll stop.
Kind of dog, is it?
Right, I'll start. Huh? What kind?
Yeah.
Oh, it's just a little Lopso. He's just trying to make himself comfortable. Can you stop, dude? Okay, he's good. Yeah, so I mostly, 99% of the time, I use the Fab Filter and the Ozone. I do tend to sometimes try out Limitless, and that's like save the day sometimes. And then what's the other one that saves the day sometimes? Is it Newfangle Audio?
Oh, yeah, is it Elevate? Is that the one?
Elevate, yeah, that one. That one's awesome sometimes too. And then standard clip is used from time to time. That's usually more for like stuff that needs to get louder. That like people really just want freaking loud. A lot of times like dance music stuff that could be super helpful for. I started playing with that gold clipper a bit.
Have you tried? Oh, is that the Schwab digital one?
Yeah.
Is that the one that's based? Is that based on the Lavary, or is that different?
It is. Yeah. But it's funny. I haven't found like I tend to use it just as a clipper. I haven't really been using the color options.
Yeah.
And I'll shoot that out against standard clip, and sometimes that one actually beats standard clip, which to me standard clip's like the gold standard.
Yeah, it's been getting used for years.
Clipper plugin. Yeah, it's just I haven't found anything better. But
see, in terms of like the whole hip hop thing, now obviously when I listen to hip hop, I always imagine 808s, and I imagine like a ton of low end. See, in regards to say like a mastering and especially like on your mix bus, how do you personally manage that that amount of low end? And is there kind of like a not set lufts, but are you normally like, what is it at hip hop? Is it -6, -7, -8? Is it quite loud? Like, how do you deal with that amount of low end, but also trying to get to that loudness as well?
It all has to do with the kick and the bass. To me, it's, you got to pick like who's going to be the winner, right? And so is the kick the focus of the song, or is the 808 the focus of the song? And then you can, like, from there you can figure out what to do from there. Like, I learned a lot. I actually went to the Mix with the Masters with Jason Joshua.
Yeah, we did. We went to Abbey Road. It was amazing.
Oh, you went to the last one? I went to the first one, and then I got to know Jay, and I've gotten to learn a lot from him just being out here.
Mm-hmm.
And like, as you know, he sidechains the 808, the 808 from the kick. And that's a great way to achieve the loudness, because, you're not bringing so much low end in.
Yeah.
And then, the other thing is like, I see a lot of people just putting a shitload of plugins on their 808 and like thinking that's going to help it and stuff. But I think sometimes just letting the 808 breathe how it was delivered can work just as well, and then shaping the kick and the bass frequency wise, just to stay out of the kick and the 808, just to stay out of each other's way. I think it's all just EQ really, or sidechain compression if it works for that song. But sometimes with you do like what Jay does, like he uses like, I'm sure people know on videos, like he'll take Soothe 2 and frequency, take a frequency dependent and bring down the kick frequency where it's hitting. Now, sometimes I found that kind of loses some of the soul of the song. And so I just won't do it, and just kind of try to figure out frequency wise how to make room. Doing it, those two things, and they sound simpler than like making it really difficult. And like I use like 60 plugins on the 808 to make it work that way. Yeah. It's just, just EQ, and level and who's going to win and what frequencies you're going to pull from either instrument to make it so that it gets to the mix bus and isn't blowing out the mix bus.
With someone like Jason in mind, what's the LA scene like in terms of engineers being protective of information and clients? I mean, Jason's obviously doing the Mix with the Masters stuff. You get a slight hint that he's not quite giving away everything, but he's giving away a lot. Some people say he is giving away everything. What are your thoughts on that? How do you feel? What is Jason like to interact with? Are you texting him on a weekly basis? Hey man, I've got this problem. What do you suggest? Yeah.
No, I don't text on my weekly basis. We usually hit Jay up. We'll talk about new plugins and stuff like that. And then I probably go up once or twice a year to his place and just hang and, see what's going on. And he did give everything away. I mean, I've sat in there for 10 hours and watched him mix, a couple songs, and the same thing you saw on all the videos.
Yeah, all the gain staging and stuff,
Yeah, but it's just, that's all cool, but his ear is what it is, That guy can hear like low end frequencies, like, I don't know, he's like, he finds them, But yeah, I mean, as far as like, I always like joke with like people, like I tell them I'm a B-list mixer, because there's like Jay and there's Serb and there's Manny and there's like and Spike and like a few other guys, and then there's everybody else, And I maybe I should even say I'm like a C or D-list mixer, because like there's some B guys after that are better or more plugged in, depending which way you look at it. I'm sure it happens. You know what I mean? I've heard stories of guys pulling off other guys from getting the mix, and it's business. It's like when I was in Berklee, I took a business course, like a music business course, and the guy said something that's always stuck with me. He says, "We are in the music business. If you take away the music, what are we in? We are in business." Nowadays, especially, you got to be able to wear both hats and be the business guy and be the music guy and know when to turn one or the other off. And I think Jay's really good at that as well. I think if you just do a really good job, you'll get hired for another job, and that's how it works. I really believe that, cream rises to the top, and if you do a good job, people are going to ask you to do another job at some point, and you never know when that record is going to be a smash. And then that smash takes you on a ride for 3 years, Like that's how Jay or Serb or any of these guys have lasted so long, because they mixed a smash record and then they got another smash record that year, and oh wow, this guy's mixed these two records, like send them everything, and that's how it works. So somebody said once, like, you're only as good as your last hit or whatever, and like I think that's true. Like I worked on this record with artist named Huddy, and Travis Barker played drums on it. Like, dude, that brought in so much work just from working on that, and that record didn't even get that huge, it's all about like what you worked on last week that helps what you're going to work on this week.
I am very, very, very sorry to interrupt this episode, but it is time for another featured plugin of the week. And this week I want to show you how you can use Sonable Smart EQ to not only tonally balance your sources, but also deal with frequency clashing, especially when you've got sources like guitars that come from the same amp, same guitar sounds stacked on top of each other. Now, this is a multi-track from the future, as we've already mixed this song, and it will be featured on next week's episode. What you're about to hear is the drums, bass, and guitars without any processing on them whatsoever. Now, hopefully what you can hear there is that the guitars are now way less harsh in the mid-range, and I think they sit really nice in the track, and they're just not as abrasive as they were without Smart EQ. The only issue that I think we still have is that the guitars, especially in the chorus, they do stack up on top of each other, and it's very hard to try and kind of pick out certain elements, kind of give them their space. Now, obviously you could play about with panning, but you know, when you've got so much frequency clashing going on, it can be difficult. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you Smart EQ's group function, which I think is a diamond feature and a feature that I've used many, many times in the past. I specifically bus the guitar elements in the way that they sit in the mix, almost like their structural progression in the way that they come in the song. And what I'm using the group function for in Smart EQ is to give them a priority. So when the chorus kicks in, I want the lead parts to take priority over the acoustic guitar and kind of the verse electric guitars. And hopefully what you'll hear is a bit of separation. And all in all, I think it just makes the guitars sound less of like a cohesive mess and gives them a little bit of structure and priority. And there you have it, Smart EQ, a very, very innovative tool, and if used correctly, could be a diamond tool and save you a ton of times in your mixing. Now, let's get back to the episode.
So how does it work with record labels? Because it's my understanding you have the singles are mixed by the celebrity engineers and then the rest is shared by a few other people. I know of a guy in London who has mixed Dua Lipa stuff, but he's not done the singles as far as I know. How do you even get to that level?
I don't know, man. It's just, I mean, I think you meet people and like I work a lot with my buddy Anthony. And so we did a lot of the Huddy record together with Barker on it. And we co-mixed a lot of that album together. And then actually Serban mixed the two hits. And then Serben's son, who's actually, I don't know if you guys is a mixer now.
I didn't know that.
And he mixed, and he's killing it. And he mixed a couple of the songs in that record too. It's just kind of the way it is, they send the hits to the hit guys.
You got the singles and then the B-sides, should we say. Is it a case of getting an opportunity like that with a label is obviously been on the label's radar, but getting your chance because the celebrity guy can do 2 tracks, the B guy can do 3 tracks, or they're not even around and they go down a list, and a bit like a dep gig in a band, you're kind of somewhere down the list maybe, and you hope that there's enough people busy enough on a day so that you get the call.
It could be like that. And I think too, it's like a lot of times it comes down to the budget, right? My rate and Serben's rate are very different.
Imagine.
You know what I mean? And so like they might pay the one they're going to do hits. Let's pay the guy that's mixed the hits for the last 20 years to make the hit, And then we'll pay the newer guys or the lower end guys to do the rest of the record. I think the way to get a hit, and this is something I don't do as much as I should, and Jay mentioned this, is to find your vessel.
Yeah.
And what that is you find artists. I have a couple artists I work with who I really like, and we just work for free, and we're working on getting them to the promised land, whatever that may be for them, right? And that's worked for me. I've worked with 2 artists that got signed, and it paid off. That's the way to get your hit, right? Like, I mean, I'm still working on it, but like, if you come in with the record and it's already mixed, the labels love that. They can just release it and push it, right? So if one of those records hits, then that could be your snowball for the next level. Like I'm trying to get to that level of making, just mixing hit records. It'd be fantastic. But honestly, in reality, there's like 6 guys that do it in the whole world, and I'm not one of them yet.
And it's crazy how there's like really 6 guys. Like so you can sit them around the tea table. That's genuinely like the hit guys. It's crazy.
So I try not to focus on that because that will drive you freaking insane. I just focus on helping the next artist I can help, and whether it's independent or if it's a major label, I don't honestly care. And I know it sounds crazy, but I almost prefer working with independents. It's just less stress.
Yeah.
And it's a happier time for me. But the label stuff is what, like, you work on a certain record that gets some recognition. That helps bring in a whole bunch of work from the independent side. It's all, like I said, it's like whatever you last work on is your resume in this business.
So, Matty, what would you look for in a young, up-and-coming engineer if you were to refer someone for a job you couldn't do, or the budget was too low for you? At what point would you say,
good question.
I know this guy?
I mean, I think that the 2 most important things is obviously that the mixes sound good that he's done previously, right? I mean, that's part of the thing. But I think, like 50% of this is being a good mixer. And once you get past the technical side, I don't care which compressor I use. If I need to compress something, I'll use an R compressor. You know what I mean? Like, that stuff doesn't necessarily matter. It's just like, do you know how to use the tool and when to use the tool? And that can be heard in people's mixes. And then the other thing, which I think is more important than how good of a mixer you are, is how good of a person you are, right? Are you friendly? Are you easy to get along with? Are you going to make the project like a good project and make everyone you're working with happy? Go the extra mile for whatever they need. If they need 17 revisions to get to that end, and you're still as happy on version 17 as you were on version 1, like, that's the way you do it, They're
unicorns, aren't they?
Yeah.
I can get to 15.
That's the way, and that's the people whoever's going to go the extra mile. Honestly, a lot of work, like, I think it's what brings people back or not back, because there's a lot of great mixers out here. All 3 of us could mix a song and it would all sound good, I think. I can get really angry with revisions. Like, revisions are like the enemy. But like, I've learned over the years, like, dude, it's just revisions. Like, just get over yourself and like, just try to make it like what they want, like, and still make it sound somewhat decent. So I think it's just being able to be like, positive through the whole project from the beginning to the end is almost as important, if not more important, than how good of a mixer you are.
So would you say it's almost like you need to have, I take it there's a mixer's mindset kind of going into this. There is actually a mindset that you have to kind of develop to kind of do this as a living.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to be psychiatrists, like we have to deal with people who are maybe like scared about releasing their music, or people who are super egotistical about releasing their music. We deal with people who think engineers are scum of the earth. We deal with people who think engineers are the greatest person ever. You know what I mean? We deal with all these different people. And the music business has got, like a lot of us got some screws loose, I'm not going to like sugarcoat it. Like we're not all like the most sane bunch, And so you're dealing with all kinds of crazy stuff. And I've seen wild stuff through the years of notes and personalities and you just got to be ready for any of it and just stay positive throughout. I think that's just a big key to it all.
Have you ever had moments in your career where you've kind of sat back and you've thought, this just isn't going well? Like you've given like revision after revision after revision after revision, and the artist or the A&R they're just not feeling it. And like, how do you deal with that pressure and to keep that motivation of, okay, I'll get there in the end? Because I can imagine at times, especially at the start, it could be pretty hard to kind of pick yourself up from the canvas, like a lot of the time.
Yeah, like this job isn't for the weak. Like there's, for instance, here's an example. Like I worked on this song and we got to like revision 7. This guy was sending me, pages and notes, and I was doing everything I can to like make this thing work, And then like he was happy with it, and then I got this email like, this is just not the mix. I can't like, just you're a terrible mixer. You're the worst human on earth. Whatever, some craziness, right? And then 3 months later, he's like, I was having a bad time, and I'm really sorry. We ended up using your mix, and would you like to mix another song? Where I politely said no, because I don't want to deal with that again, right? But like, it took a long, long time, and I'm not there yet. But I've really gotten to the point where it's like, you cannot take any of this personal.
Mm-hmm.
How someone feels about your mix has no reflection of how good of a human I am inside, right? And I know that sounds really deep, but like, when you love mixing and music so much that like someone sends you like, it's good, but it's not great note, it could devastate me for days when I would ever get one of those. You know what I mean? It would just be like, fuck, dude, I suck, and like, and it would like just bring me down. You know what I mean? Now I've gotten to the point where I've done this long enough that those happen. Like I would say every 4 months you get one of these where it's not working, or whatever, and it's not always like, that's why I say I don't take it personal anymore, because I've realized 80% of the time it's not me, it's usually them. It's something wrong like with how they feel about their music, or it's not what they want it to be, and they think that me as the mixer is going to solve the production issues, the fact that you can't even sing issues, whatever the issues it is, right? And I can only mix the record. Like mixing isn't everything, So I've just kind of gotten the realization of that. And then, as you said, like if it gets to a point where like it's just not working, you don't feel it's working, I've like come to the point where I don't want to deal with that headache. And I know you as a client doesn't either. And if I really feel like this mix is going to go, I go, look, man, no hard feelings, but I don't think I'm the guy for this job. Here's all your money back. Go find someone that's going to help you with the song, because I want you to succeed. I don't want to be the problem, And that, dude, the relief by doing that sometimes, and like I said, that happens twice a year, maybe not even that. But the relief of being able to do that is huge, man. It's like, I left this situation in a good place. Like I gave the guy everything he started with back. I said, go find your guy. And I still kept the whole situation, in a positive way,
Do you find there's an interesting correlation between how good someone is and how demanding they are? I know from a live sound point of view, the great musicians who had their sound together, they could perform, they were comfortable with having no monitoring. It didn't matter to them. They were so good, they could adapt regardless. Whereas you could give guys the best stereo in-ear mix, and if they haven't got their stuff together and they can't singers were usually the problem,
right.
They would be the ones complaining. And I'd listen into mixes and be like, dude, you have no idea how lucky you are to get this stereo mix so carefully balanced, EQ to your in-ear monitors, because I know that monitor profile, and you're still complaining. Like, I'm not the problem here. Do you find there's a proportion between ability and diviness, should we say?
I would say that's 80% true. Yeah.
That's crazy.
I mean,
that's crazy.
I find that the songs that are not, in my eyes, finished, maybe, will end up getting the most notes. And it's like we're trying to fix something, that isn't to be fixed in mixing,
But can you not put a producer hat on there? Are you comfortable coming out of the mix engineer role and saying, okay, I'm offering a service here, but actually maybe if we communicate, maybe this needs a keys pad. What are the chords?
Yeah.
I can record that for you. Or maybe there's too many parts. The track coming up next week that Paul and I have mixed, I deleted a part and I edited a couple of parts out because it was just guitar stuff all over the place. I was like, this doesn't work. It's distracting. It's too much.
Yeah, I do. I definitely think there's a great opportunity to be had if you can, like, communicate with the artist. Like, maybe this doesn't work, or maybe that was, and that works sometimes. And then sometimes people are just set on that song being the way it is, and it's that's a great idea, but no, like, I always think it's worth it if you really think something's going to make it better to try it. And then they might not like it, and that's another time when you just don't take it personal. All right, cool. We'll just put the files back the way it was, and
Yeah, I guess it's about communication, but also being aware. And I know this from doing my own stuff, just how easy it is. You get so used to hearing something, you can't take yourself out of that box.
That's a big problem now too.
And I think that's quite interesting, having that experience of myself when I'm listening to other people play stuff. I'm like, I'm not. I've heard it this way a million times. It's hard to hear it and understand it and appreciate it this way that I'm hearing for the first time. So, yeah, that's a tricky one. Yeah,
that's a big problem these days. I mean, like, everyone's so used to the rough mix. And this is even, I would say, almost more so in the major label world, where everyone's been listening to the rough mix for so long, and you change it too much, and you're going to get some bad notes back. Like,
I've been there.
So like, that's, for me, in the last 4 years, has been the biggest learning experience of that, where things have changed. And it's like, how do you keep it the rough mix, but better? You know what I mean? And that's taken a lot of, like, learning from working with artists to find, like, how far to push certain songs, how far to push them, like, in a good way, or are you taking it too far from what they envisioned, And that takes a lot of practice, I think, to learn where that medium is. And, for each artist, what it is, I think it's one of the biggest struggles in mixing these days right now.
I have to ask you, right, because you're in this world, Dolby Atmos, is it here, right? Is it here? Because I mean, I'm on Tidal, and I'm looking on the Dolby Atmos, and I'm listening to them, and I'm like, right, okay, big artists, big artists, big artists, big artists, big artists. They've all got Atmos mixes, right? So is Dolby Atmos here?
I don't know, man. It's here for major labels right now.
Okay.
I don't think it's here for the independents at all.
Right, okay.
I've had 2 artists in the last year ask me on the independent side for a Dolby mix, And one of my friends is, like, one of the bigger Dolby guys in Mexico, actually. And that's all he does now is Dolby Atmos mixing. All the label stuff down there, and he does some stuff up from the States as well. He's been telling me, like, it's still happening, obviously, but it wasn't like it was a year and a half ago.
Okay, so actually, I was getting a little bit.
We're going to Dolby, like, everything, like, and you went to NAMM, and it was like Dolby.
It was mental.
Like, it was nuts, and these speaker companies love it. You know what I mean? But I don't know. I still don't know, man. The verdict's still out for me. I just can't tell if it's going to go there or not. I personally feel it's a thing Apple wants us to do so they can sell more headphones. I really think that's why it's happened. I don't, Spotify still isn't on board with it.
Man, I don't think they will be. I don't think they're going to move from the looks of it.
Yeah, and I mean, and just to get, I think, high res, I don't know if it's been out yet, but they're going to charge you more for a higher quality.
Yeah, I think they've delayed it again. Yeah.
Did they? Yeah. So, I mean, no one wants to pay more for that. No. And this is the sad part, is the average listener probably couldn't tell you if they're listening to a Dolby mix or a stereo mix. I mean, they just can't, I, like my wife, who isn't a musician and, doesn't care about this stuff at all, which is probably why I love her. I said, listen to this new Dolby thing. And, like, she's like, what? It was like some Weekend song that she knew. And she's like, what is it? Like, what am I listening for? Like, what do we, I'm like, you don't hear it? Like, the synth went across your head and it was really cool. And she's like, nah, like, it's just the Weekend song. And okay. Where I do think this could change is with these new Apple Vision goggles coming out.
Yeah.
And Meta and all this world, not that we're there yet, but in 10 years, now that's where maybe it all starts coming into play, where you're in a virtual world with the music all around you. And that's when it could get cool and maybe more useful. And maybe my other, idea of, other than Apple wanting to sell more headphones, is them pushing us for that world,
Yeah.
that we're all being pushed into next is with the virtual worlds we'll be living in 10 years, and that is where maybe the Dolby stuff makes more sense,
What's your thoughts on it in regards to experiencing it in like an actual like Dolby room?
I think it's cool, and it's like, wow, this is like incredible, but it doesn't translate to the headphone
No, not
mix.
at all. No, it doesn't.
And it's the same thing when 5.1 came out. Like, no one's going to be able to, like, I can barely set up my speakers in a perfect triangle. Like, you think, like, Joe Schmo is going to be able to set a 7.1.4 room up in his living room? Like, it's just not going to happen, And so, like, who's going to experience that? Just us, So, in that respect, I don't think it's going to last. But if they get the headphone thing better, and it does get better, supposedly, that's the only way I think Dolby could survive is in headphones. It's not going to be, and although like I have the Scen speakers, CYNG, and you only need 4 to get 7.1.4. So maybe if they can find a way to do that, so you only need a couple speakers to get it, and they shoot out different speakers from one stand. Mm-hmm. Then maybe you could get it in living rooms and stuff.
Because I do think, but I just got sent and Ed's, as your Sonys came yet, the MV1s?
I believe they're on their way.
Right, because what's
the
interesting...
MV1s?
Yeah, because I was interested to get them. Because my Atmos room's nearly finished, I was like, right, I need to maybe start listening to kind of how some of the immersive mixes sound. And I was listening to Atmos, and I was listening to Sony 365, and there is a definite sound difference. But what's really interesting about the measurements of the Sony headphones, what they've got to do to try and get some form of the sound in headphones is quite crazy. Like the frequency response of the Sonys in the high end, it's got a big dip and then a big boost and then another like big dip. And I was speaking to a few engineers, and they were like, I think it's because the ceiling speakers or whatever it is in Dolby Atmos, there's a recessed high end or something like that. And I was listening to the Sonys going, this is probably the closest that you're going to get, but I know it's not Dolby Atmos or it's not Sony 365 because you've not got the ceiling speakers. Like, that's one thing. Headphones can't do that over your head. And I mean, it is impressive what I do, and I actually do enjoy listening to a really good Dolby Atmos mix or a really good Sony 365 mix on these Sony headphones, but I know it's still just like a very diluted version of what it actually is. But that brings me on, as I'm speaking about headphones. Do you mix on headphones ever, or are you mainly a speaker guy, or do you just kind of go on the cans just to kind of give you a bit of a binaural check?
Yeah, I'm mostly a speaker guy. I do like listen to the final mix in cans. I have the Key 3 speakers, and what's interesting about them is like they sound really close to headphones. I don't know why. I mean, I wouldn't say close to headphones, but they just translate to headphones super well. And I don't know, maybe because the way the cardioid thing happens with the bass, that it's so directional to me, and that's kind of like how headphones are. Yeah. But they translate really well to headphones. But yeah, I do check, and I've done a few mixes just in headphones, and they've translated okay. I got the Audizy's LCD 5s, and then these are the LCD 1s, which I travel with. And I actually sometimes like these a bit better. Yeah, I've done a few mixes in it, and I'll do revisions in them if I'm on the road. But I'm not fully there as to just mixing in headphones yet.
How long did it take you to get the translation right for you? Because I think that I'm only getting to the point now where I'm like happy with my translation to monitors, like mixing on headphones. Again, I don't give a shit about the car. I don't know. I don't really do the car test, but the phone. That's the one thing that's still grating me. And I think me and Ed were talking about mono compatibility and like how long did it take you to kind of get that translation to other systems down, and how you deal with mono compatibility? Because I think Ed would be quite interested on that one, wouldn't you, Ed?
I'm like one of the old school guys where I just don't care. I just I make it sound as good as it can on these speakers, and whatever happens to it once it hits the wild is what happens to it, right? But like I trust my room so much now, and I've done enough mixes in here that I know it's going to sound pretty dang close to the way I got it sounding in here when it gets out there, right? There was a point, was it 3 or 4 years ago, where Instagram was doing, and I can't remember now, but Instagram was doing something weird to the music
Still does. It
was
still sounds weird to me. Audio sounds really weird.
It was clipping or switching it to mono in Android phones or something, and that's the only time I started going down like the rabbit hole of like the phone and what social media is doing to it. I mean, what like Instagram's doing to it or something. I just find like if I start focusing on like what it's going to sound like through Instagram, then I'm going to lose perspective of like this just the song, and it's just I just find if I get it sounding as good as I can through these speakers, it's usually going to translate decently to everything else. So,
are you an LCR man, or do you like to kind of have your panning like quite sparse and you use the whole spectrum, or are you like an LCR mixer?
I use the whole spectrum, yeah. A lot of times you're getting a lot of synths that are already super stereo anyway, and if you move them, the artist is like, what? Like why is that over there now? Like I feel like when you're mixing more organic music, like rock, or I've been doing some country lately, which is so much fun, you can really work with panning a lot more than you can if you're working on a pop or hip hop song. So I think it's just I got to know when to move something and when not to.
See, on the country records, because me and Ed done a record last week, and we took two very different approaches. And Ed took kind of the modern country approach, which was basically like layering a ton of samples, and I took the very natural approach of again it was like 47s on the kicks and stuff, and I took the original kit and I just tried to make that. I used samples, but it was very, very light. Now we were talking about country and how it does sound very, very sample centric, and there's a few songs just now where the snares are like doo 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 doo. So say when you get these country records, are a lot of the samples already kind of given to you, or do you use a lot of samples if you do these country records? Like, how does it work?
Yeah, I usually get just the drum set, but I definitely always add samples to the kick and the snare. Every once in a while I'll do toms if there's maybe recorded badly, but it's definitely always some samples on the kick and the snare. It just elevates it so much that I wouldn't want to do it without it. I mean, now there are times where it just doesn't work, but I find more times than not, I have samples being used for the songs I'm mixing.
And how anal are you as a drummer? Because Ed is very anal with his drums, and every drummer I've ever spoken to that does mixing is very anal about timing, very anal about the drums. Is that something that you still have today, where you're all about the timing and like the drums are such a massive focal point, or is it something that you kind of relaxed a little bit over time, or are you like Ed and you're still a drum anal
My
freak?
thing is, it always has to be in drummer's perspective.
Yeah.
Like, I hate it when I get when the files are sent. I'm like, God damn, they did audience perspective. Like, it has to be the drummer's perspective. and some records, I will just switch everything around and make it drummer's perspective. Like, I'm so like adamant about that part.
Have you ever swapped a track round and had a client call you out on it?
I have had it one time, like,
really?
but it's yeah. Like, the drums feel different. Like, they couldn't place what it was, but they knew something was different.
Oh, well, if they couldn't tell you exactly what it was, fuck them.
Yeah, I know. So then I switched it and sent it back. They're like, yes, that's it. Like,
right, okay. Wow.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, our we're so technical, but our artists are just listening, and that's why I have a thing where I can shut my screen off and I just listen, and that makes just such a difference. And also, I don't know if you guys can see, but I have a pair of Cali speakers set up back here. Cali Audio, and that is actually, when you said like translating, that is something I actually do, and it's just a pair of speakers set up on the back wall, and I go sit there when my mix is almost done, and I just listen to the mix. And there's something about no screen in front of you and no mouse or keyboard to touch that I can just, all these little things will come up, or maybe none, but some things will come up that I was just absolutely not hearing in front of the Pro Tools screen over here. And I don't know why that is, but there's something about just like, you remove yourself from the screen of Pro Tools and you start hearing it like the listener and not the engineer, And so that's been a really cool thing, is just to have another pair of speakers on the other side of the room where you just listen to the mix or listen to the song, not the mix. Just some things you might not have heard will just pop right out. It's really wild. It's almost like, I know, like when you work on a mix and you close it and you come back the day later or the hours later, open it back. Oh wow! Like, it's kind of like fresh ears. Like, it's like a hack.
The Working Audio Tools podcast is brought to you in association with our friends at DroKid for all of your musical distribution needs. For a little bit more, $39.99 a month, you can have 2 artists on your roster, which includes everything just mentioned. Additionally, synced lyrics in Apple Music, further streaming analytics statistics. You can create a customizable record name. Mine, for example, is Ed Thorne Rhythm and Records. And you can customize release dates, pre-order dates, iTunes pricing, and again, much more. Now, if you're an artist manager or a record label, the Ultimate Bundle gives you up to 100 artists for just $89.99 a year. And you get 1 terabyte of instant file sharing, which is useful, but also contact information for thousands of playlist curators on Spotify. This is really useful so you can pitch your artist music to playlist curators around the world, only available in the Ultimate Bundle from DroKid. Did you have any pivotal experiences in your earlier career where something happened and you were maybe schooled or you had your eyes open in a certain way by someone that at the time felt horribly bitter and demoralizing, but actually in hindsight you realize was a real pivotal experience for you?
That's kind of a dark question there. Let me
We throw it to every guest.
Moving to LA was probably the darkest period of my life the second year I was here. And just understanding that the business is completely different here, and also understanding that just because you got the ticket to LA doesn't mean you've made it in any sort of way. You know, like some people are like, oh, you get signed and it's like you're there. I kind of believe the dream a little bit too. And we got out here and I thought we'd made it or whatever, you know. I think we all have to figure out what made it is in our head for us. Realizing, like, once again, almost like when I went from drumming in New England to drumming in Berklee, going from Boston to LA was like a whole nother thing of like, dude, you ain't nobody. And yeah, it's kind of like start all over again out here, you know.
To be fair, it's a very tough question, and we always
really
always just put it right in there without you expecting.
I know, it's like, what is the darkest moment of your life?
Do you have an assistant, or do you do everything yourself?
I mostly do everything myself. I have had some in the past, but honestly, SoundFlow is kind of taken that job. It just, you can do so much with SoundFlow now. Have you guys used? I don't know if are you guys Pro Tools guys or?
I was, but I moved to Studio One. But are you thinking about moving to Pro Tools, Ed?
I'm researching the potential, or at least I need to be fluid on it.
Controversial, Mr. Thorne.
I mean, I was a Pro Tools guy. I grew up on Pro Tools. I switched to Studio One.
I remember that
for my videos. Yeah. And then I had this like period of like third-party plugins not working with Studio One. And I was like, I cannot work this way. And I went back to Pro Tools just for the stability of it. Now, some people have told me Studio One's gotten better, but I don't know. Once they came out with SoundFlow, I just feel like it's the best it can be right now.
Okay, so just we're near the end, but I think it'd be quite interesting. What is SoundFlow? Because I actually don't know what it is.
Okay, so it's this company that came out, and the guys who started are awesome, but they were mostly post audio guys, like movie audio stuff. And they started making these, like, they call them scripts, basically, which can do a bunch of things in Pro Tools, right? So, like, I have one that will color code to set up a session, right? I color code my different instrument groups and send them to, I run all mine through, like, some sort of bus, like the music bus, drum bus, percussion bus, stuff like that. So I can select all the tracks, hit a button, it will color code them and route the output to that bus. Just with one button, right? And then it has there's this program, Andrew Schweppes uses it too. It's called Bounce Factory. And I can, select tracks and just hit a button and my stems will print while I go have lunch, you know?
Didn't Andrew write that script? I think he wrote that software himself.
Yeah, he did with some of the guys, I think, that own the company.
Right. They mentioned that at NAMM.
Yeah.
I was like, you nerd.
I know. He's
come on, Paul, what are you playing at?
Yeah.
Where's your app?
Mine's would be the fucking longest script you've ever seen. Even the app would be like, no, I'm done, Paul, fuck off. No, shut down.
Yeah. But yeah, and like, for AB and the rough mixes, I use Metric AB. And so I have a button that just opens that up and like switches it, Like, you can do whatever you want with these scripts. So The only problem I have now with Pro Tools is this, that I'm not like I'm a fan of the soft tube Console One stuff, and some things like that you just can't freaking use as well as you can with Studio One. So I am checking out Cubase right now.
Oh, yeah.
Just a little FYI. Yeah, just to see what it does.
Because it's interesting because I know a lot of guys that are Cubase users and they'll say to me, Paul, like Cubase and Studio One are like so close together.
Yeah.
I've had no issues with Studio One so far. And they're way to send me the fader port 16 and stuff like that. Just because I'm like yourself with the soft tube. I miss the hands-on. I miss it even from my college days. There's just something that I don't know.
Yeah.
I got bored with the mouse.
My friends, like some of my engineer buddies, think I'm like laugh at me. I am like obsessed with controllers.
Yeah.
Like
You've got the SSL one, don't you?
I do. Yeah. I sold the SSL one because that one started annoying. Yeah. But I do have the console one. I have a couple of the Avid ones. What else do I have? I have the Rock Solid Audio one's really cool too. I have that one. I have way too many controllers in.
Right, Ed, I would say that's been another fantastic episode. And again, I am amazed in an hour and 16 minutes we've been able to cram so much. I think we've been able to cram probably the most we ever have in an episode. Hey. So I would say, honestly, props to you, Matty, for giving us the gold. To you guys. But again, thank you so much for your time. Again, I know, you are also unbelievably busy. It's been great having you on. I think again, a wealth of knowledge here. So, what's the plans for you future? Have you got any plans YouTube wise? Are you kind of seeing yourself maybe taking the back seat on YouTube? Are you still going for it, or what's your plans? Future plans? I
have fun. So YouTube for me was a hobby at the whole beginning of it, and it was a way for me to give back, like the guys that I learned from in the studios. Now, a lot of times I'm just farting around with new plugins on YouTube, so it's not. I don't know how much that's giving back. I feel like I like to hope that like the plugin, because like a plugin review does way better than you talking about some far off concept. So I've tried to make it so when I do a plugin review, it like I'm teaching something too, and I don't know if that translates or not, but I'm hoping it does. I like doing it, man. It's just fun, you know what I mean? And it's a cool way to talk to people and keep your name out in the circles. And so yeah, I'm still trying. I shoot for a video a week, but it never actually happens.
Yeah, see, trying to do a video a week, it's just like it's so hard.
Yeah,
it's like
it's hard. It's hard.
Yeah.
Trying to earn a living as well.
I know.
So I just it's usually every other week I can pull something off.
And you've even, I love the fact that we've all got our own little catchphrases as well. It's like yours is the most. I've got hello. You got let's go. Ed, have you got
let's go.
Have you got a catchphrase, Ed? I don't actually think you do you?
Mine's it's been emotional.
Oh yeah,
it's been emotional.
Which is proof that you never get to the end of my videos. There we go. Paul admitted it live on air. Don't you fucking dare say it.
Know what, guys? No, actually, come on. That's a lie. I watch all of your videos. I get you. Know what? I'm probably the only guy that watches your videos all the way through it. Do you know that? I'm the one keeping your attention up, right? Right? Just from always remember
videos, that. The honesty in Ed's videos is what everyone needs. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's something that we have all kind of came to the point where we have realized the importance of honesty, transparency, and you know, just being honest with people and know if someone sucks, then it sucks. You know what I mean? It is what it is. If someone's brilliant, then it's brilliant, and that's what it's all about.
On that bombshell, ladies, gentlemen,
no.
theys and thems.
That'll be a shit edit for you. That'll be a shit edit for you to put in. That wasn't going to work.
On that bombshell, it's been emotional. A big thank you to Matty for sharing his experience from the other side of the pond all the way over in LA. Thanks again to Paul. Thanks again to myself. It's been emotional. Did I say that? I probably did. See you next time.
Bye-bye.